I looked at the folded paper my father-in-law just handed me at my own wedding reception and thought it was a joke. Rules for your marriage was written at the top. I was wrong. Dead wrong. My name is Maylin, and last year I married the love of my life, David. We'd been together 3 years. He's quiet, logical, never one to rock the boat. Me. I speak my mind. We balanced each other perfectly, except for one massive problem. His father, Richard. From day one, this man acted like he owned the world. He runs a chain of hardware stores across Virginia, has serious money, and makes sure everyone knows it. Everything is about power to him. Who's in charge? Who gets the final say? His wife, Keiko. Quiet as a whisper. His other sons. Same story. David. Exactly the same. Our wedding was beautiful. This gorgeous vineyard near Charlottesville. Small, intimate, perfect. My family flew in from California. Everything felt like a fairy tale. Then during the reception, while people were still eating dinner, Richard asked to talk to me privately. I figured he wanted to give fatherly advice or something sweet. Boy, was I wrong. He hands me this folded paper with the smuggest smile I've ever seen. I open it up and nearly choke. Rules for your marriage, in bold letters at the top. Rule number 1, all major decisions must be approved by me. Rule number 2, family holidays will be hosted at my house unless I say otherwise. Rule number 3, any large purchases must be discussed with me first. There were 11 rules total. 11. At my own wedding. I actually laughed out loud. I thought this had to be some weird father-in-law humor. But his face was stone serious. You'll understand, he said with that little smirk. Things work smoother this way. Everyone's happier when I'm involved. I just folded the paper, smiled, and said, "Okay, thanks." Later that night, I showed David the list. He didn't even look surprised. Just sighed and said, "Yeah, just go along with it. It's easier that way." That's when it hit me like a freight train. This man had been controlling his entire family for decades. David was trained from birth to keep his head down. Smile, agree, move on. But I am not wired that way. Not even close. I didn't fight about it that night. I smiled and nodded like a good little daughter-in-law. But inside, the wheels were already spinning. We got back from our honeymoon a week later. I waited until things settled down, then made an appointment with a lawyer in Richmond. Someone who specializes in boundary issues with extended family. I walked into her office with Richard's list. She read it and immediately looked up at me. "So what exactly is your father-in-law's role in your marriage?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "At least there shouldn't be one." We spent 2 hours going over everything. What he could legally do, what he couldn't, how to set boundaries without starting World War III. She explained that if he ever tried to control property titles, financial accounts, or childcare decisions, I had every right to shut him down. "But honestly," she said, "the best thing is to make it crystal clear you're not playing his game." We drafted a document. Not a legal threat, but a formal notice that would draw the line if he tried anything again. Simple, direct, professional. It basically said, "Thank you for your interest in our household decisions. Going forward, please direct any suggestions through David and me together. Major decisions will be made privately between the two of us. We will not be seeking external approvals. Thank you for understanding." Clean, clear, ironclad. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 months later, David and I started house hunting. We've been saving up, going to open houses, meeting with realtors. Normal newly married couple stuff. Guess who heard about it and invited us over to discuss our plans? We show up at Richard's house. He's got folders on the table, listings he picked out, mortgage plans printed from the bank. Full presentation mode. David sits down and starts flipping through pages like this is totally normal. Meanwhile, I pull out my folder and hand Richard the document. He opens it, reads it. Complete silence. For once in his life, this man had no comeback. No smug smirk. No sarcastic comment. Just dead quiet. Finally, he looks up and says, "Is this necessary?" "Yes," I said. "It is." And that was it. For the first time since I met him, he didn't push back. Just nodded. We left right after that. David was quiet on the drive home, but he seemed relieved. Like someone finally said what he'd been too afraid to say his entire life. I thought that was the end of it. I was so naive. For a few months, everything seemed calm. Too calm. We bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house just outside Richmond. Big yard, screen porch, everything we dreamed of. David seemed happier than I'd ever seen him. But I knew better than to think Richard was done. And I was right. It started small. Little comments during Sunday dinners at his house. "Oh, you went with that neighborhood? Interesting. Hope you got the pipes checked. Those houses are known for issues. When you're ready to remodel, I have a contractor. Don't sign anything until I approve the plans." I ignored it. Figured if I didn't feed the fire, he'd lose interest. But this man was just getting started. 6 months after we moved in, David's brother Hiroshi and his wife Yuki had their first baby. Richard latched onto that grandpa role hard. Constant visits, buying baby stuff nobody asked for, telling Yuki how to feed the baby, dress the baby, when the baby should sleep. It was exhausting just watching it happen. Then one night over dinner, he turned to me with that familiar smirk. "When you two have kids, we'll do it the proper way. I'll help set the schedule. We'll use the family doctor. I'll handle the daycare search. I already have ideas." I stared at him. David stayed quiet, eyes glued to his plate. I forced a smile and said, "Well, that's a long way off." He leaned back, smug as ever. "You'll thank me. I know how these things should be done." That night, I told David flat out, "I'm not doing this. I'm not bringing kids into a situation where your father thinks he's a third parent." David just sighed. "I know. I don't know how to stop him. This is just how he is." I barely slept that night. Then came the real bombshell. One afternoon, David got an email from his dad. An offer to help with our mortgage. Here's what the offer actually said. "I'm willing to pay off a portion of your loan. In return, I'd like my name added to the deed, purely for family security. Nothing will change on your end, but if anything happens, I can step in and make sure the house stays in the family." I felt physically sick reading it. This man wasn't backing down. He was escalating. He wanted legal control over our house, our biggest investment. And here's the worst part. David actually considered it. "Maybe it's worth thinking about," he said that night. "It would take pressure off. Less debt." That's when I realized how deep Richard's grip really was. This wasn't just habit. It was survival mode. David couldn't even recognize manipulation when it was staring him in the face. "Absolutely not," I said. "I don't care if we never pay off this house. He is not getting his name on anything we own." It turned into the biggest fight we'd ever had. David was torn between me and the man who'd been controlling him since birth. Finally, I said, "Look, I love you, but I'm not living under your father's thumb. I won't do it, and I'm not afraid to take steps if I have to." That got through to him. The next day, we emailed Richard back. "Thanks for the offer, but we're not interested. Our home is our own. Simple. Final." But the damage was done. Richard now saw me as the enemy, the one pulling his son away, breaking tradition. About a week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I figured it was work-related. It was him. "I think we should meet," he said. "Just the two of us. Talk woman to man. Clear the air." Something about his tone made my skin crawl, but I agreed. I wanted to hear what he had to say. We met at this old diner halfway between our houses. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, sipping black coffee like some mafia boss. I sat down. No small talk. He leaned forward and said, "Listen, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this family has a way of operating. Always has. You can fight it all you want, but eventually you'll see. It's better to have me on your side, or things get difficult." I looked him straight in the eye. "Difficult for who?" He just smiled. I finished my water, stood up, and said, "Thanks for the chat." On the drive home, I realized something. This man didn't just want to control us. He thought he owned us. And he wasn't going to stop until we either gave in or pushed back hard enough to make him regret it. So I called my lawyer again. This time, we started drafting something much stronger. I thought the diner meeting was his big play, his warning shot. I was wrong. That was just his warm-up. The real move came a month later. It was a Saturday morning. I was out back pulling weeds when David came outside looking pale as a ghost. He handed me his phone without a word. Group text sent to him, his brothers, his mom, and me. "Family meeting at my house tonight. Non-negotiable. Future family plans. holiday arrangements, financial security, and expectations going forward. Attendance mandatory. I stared at the screen. What the hell is this? David shrugged. I've never seen him do something like this before. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about us anymore. He was pulling everyone in. His whole family. He wanted an audience. This man thought he was going to publicly put me in my place. We went. I almost didn't, but something told me I needed to see exactly what he had planned. Everyone was already there when we arrived. Richard sat at the head of the dining table, papers spread out like some corporate boardroom meeting. He started talking before we even sat down. No hello, no small talk. There's been confusion about how things should run moving forward, he said. So I've prepared some guidelines for all of us. Keep things smooth when we're all on the same page. He handed out copies of a typed document. I couldn't believe it. Rules for the entire family. Formalize control. All property decisions require group input unless overridden by me. Major family holidays rotate unless overridden by me. Child-rearing practices will be standardized to preserve family values. Financial assistance, when offered, grants oversight rights. Pages and pages of this garbage. I looked around the table. Keiko was staring at her lap. His other sons were just reading like this was normal business. Finally, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is not happening." He smirked. "I'm just keeping order." You don't see anyone else complaining. I looked at David. This was his moment. He had to choose a side, and I watched him just sit there, silent. I felt the coldest wave of disappointment I've ever experienced in my life. But I didn't lose my cool. I said, "Thank you for dinner," and left. Alone. That night, I stayed at my friend's place. I needed space to think. The next morning, I made another call to my lawyer. We didn't just draft a stronger letter this time. We started the process of legally blocking his interference entirely. Formal no-contact notice regarding our finances and assets. Updated property deeds, wills, medical directives. All with specific clauses keeping him out of any decision-making. We locked everything down tight. But here's the real twist. While doing all this paperwork, my lawyer uncovered something wild. Remember when we first bought the house and Richard recommended a mortgage broker? Someone he trusted? That broker was quietly feeding Richard updates on our payments, escrow accounts, loan status. Nothing criminal, but a total violation of privacy. And we caught it in writing. Emails, messages. The broker had CC'd Richard on at least 4 messages over 6 months. Now I wasn't just mad. I had evidence. My lawyer was practically giddy. If you want to go nuclear, we can. This is grounds for formal complaints and possibly legal action. But before we made our next move, Richard tried one last stunt. Out of nowhere, he invited us to dinner at the fancy steakhouse downtown. Just us. David begged me to go. Said his dad wanted to apologize, make peace. I didn't believe it, but I wanted to see how deep this man's game really went. The food was good. Conversation was light. He was being normal, pleasant. Then dessert came. That's when he pulled out a contract and slid it across the table. I swear on everything I hold sacred, this man tried to get us to sign an agreement giving him co-ownership rights to our property for tax benefits and future security. I pushed it back toward him. No. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Richard just smiled. It's not personal. It's just business. At that moment, I realized he was never going to stop. Not unless we made him. And that's exactly what I planned to do. After that steakhouse stunt, I knew we were on borrowed time. This man was making moves like we were pieces on his chessboard, trying to corner us. And David still wasn't standing up to him. Not really. Every time I pushed, he made excuses. That's just how he is. Or, let's not make this bigger than it has to be. But it was big. Had been big since the wedding. I was done pretending otherwise. So I made a plan. I called my lawyer, and we decided on the only thing that would actually end this. I told David we needed one more family dinner. At our house. Neutral ground. Invite everyone, I said. Your brothers, your mom, your dad. Everyone who's been quietly letting this happen. He looked nervous but agreed. The night of the dinner, I set the table like any other gathering. Made sure the house was spotless. Cooked a big meal. Lit candles, soft music. The whole thing looked peaceful. But I had a folder sitting on the sideboard. Ready. They all showed up right on time. Keiko silent as always. His brothers making small talk. Richard acting like he was the guest of honor, laughing and telling stories while sipping his usual bourbon. Dinner went by quietly. Too quietly. Everyone felt the tension, but didn't know where it was coming from. Then, as we were clearing plates, I walked over to the sideboard, grabbed the folder, and laid it right in front of Richard. Before dessert, I said, "We're going to clear something up." He looked at the folder, then at me. "What's this?" "Proof," I said, "of what you've been doing. The mortgage broker, the emails, the privacy violations, the contracts, the rules, the manipulation. Everything." The whole table went dead silent. Keiko looked like she wanted to disappear. His brothers suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. David stared down at his hands. "You've been controlling this family for decades," I continued. "But it stops tonight. You are no longer part of our decisions. Not our finances. You will not be part of any future children's lives, unless invited. You are not welcome to interfere in any part of our marriage or home. And if you try, I will pursue legal action. I have all the paperwork ready to do it." I watched his face go from red to pale in under a minute. But of course, he tried to recover. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on. You're overreacting. This is just family business. I was helping." And then came the moment I'll never forget. David finally spoke up. For the first time ever. "No," he said. "You weren't helping. You've been controlling me my entire life. Mom, my brothers. And we all just let you. But we're done. You don't run us anymore." You could have heard a pin drop. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," David said, pushing the folder toward him. "Take it. Read it or don't. But this is over." Then came the part one didn't expect. Keiko started crying right there at the table. Years of silence just cracked open all at once. "Do you know what it's been like?" she said through tears. "Living under this all these years. I don't even know who I am anymore." His brothers, who'd barely spoken all night, both nodded. One of them added, "I thought this was just how families worked. Now I see it's not." Meanwhile, Richard just sat there. No comeback. No jokes. No smirk. For the first time since I met him, he looked small. And alone. He left before dessert. Didn't say goodbye. Just got up, took the folder and walked out. The room stayed quiet long after the door shut. No one knew what to do. David looked at me and said, "I should have said something years ago." I nodded. "Yeah, but you did it now." Keiko stayed behind to help clean up. I caught her staring at the door a lot, like she half expected him to come back. He didn't. At least not that night. The next week was strange. No calls from him. No emails. Nothing. Like he just vanished. David seemed lighter, freer, but also sad in a way I didn't expect. I think he finally realized how much of his life had been spent trying to keep his dad happy. Me. I felt exhausted, angry, but also relieved. Not just for myself, but for the whole family. Because here's the truth. It was never just about me. It was about a man who built his entire identity on control. And what happens when the people you control finally wake up? A few weeks later, Richard finally sent an email. Short and simple. "I've read everything. I see where this is going. I'll keep my distance for now." No apology. No real admission. But honestly, that was probably the closest we'd ever get. And that was fine. Because the difference now was crystal clear. This time, it wasn't up to him anymore. We had the power, and we weren't giving it back.